This is the news on top of the hour.
Live from our studio in Georgetown.
Kaicho Radio, 99.1 FM.
Hello, welcome to your news at noon for March 29th, 2021. I am Kevin Smith. These are the top stories we're tracking. Where did Jagdeo get his figures without a feasibility study? Guyanese must be concerned, says ANA executive. And 15 years later, Guyana is still without robust procurement rules, IDB report, and says practices continue to receive lowest scores. Meanwhile, despite March being deadliest month, public behavior has not changed. Emergency medicine specialists. And 6 years after oil discovery, government now scrambling to boost GRA's capacity. Meanwhile, cop in custody for killing pedestrian, and GDF ranks beaten and stabbed by civilians at Linden Party. Do stay tuned.
It is here, the Wake Up Guyana program with your host, Tony from Myconi, Monday through Friday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Kaicho Radio, FM 99.1 in Demerara and Essequibo and 99.5 in Berbice. The radio with a difference.
Digicel Prime Bundles just got better with 3 new apps. Watch more with PlayGo. Share more with Sportsmax. Read more news with Loop. Listen more with D-Music. Plus extra data. It's simply more bundled together. 51 gigabytes for 7 days for only $2,000. Live the experience with Digicel. Activate today on the My Digicel app.
And now for the news in detail. The construction of a gas-to-shore power plant without undertaking a cost-benefit analysis or feasibility for a project that could likely cost Guyana some $800 million should be cause for concern to all Guyanese. This is according to ANA executive Jonathan Yearwood. Yearwood, whose party holds representation in the National Assembly, was at the time responding to an article carried by Kaicho News captioned "Financial Feasibility of Gas-to-Shore a No-Brainer," says Vice President Bharat Jagdeo. Yearwood said he would like to ask Jagdeo how possible was it for him to arrive at the figures of $7 or $8 per kilowatt hour, or to cut the cost of generation by 50% from the current level, as no feasibility study was done. Yearwood, relying on an Investopedia definition, noted that a feasibility study is an analysis that takes all of a project's relevant factors into account to ascertain the likelihood of completing the project successfully. He was adamant that the importance of a feasibility study is based on organizational desire to get it right before committing resources, time, or budget. And now let's tell you, public procurement is a critical area that needs prompt improvement, as it represents about a quarter of a budget and plays a critical role improving financial management in the Caribbean. Making these and other fundamental points is the Inter-American Development Bank, or IDB, in its recent report titled Economic Institutions for a Resilient Caribbean. One country in need of this prompt improvement is Guyana, says the IDB, as it highlighted that despite 15 years of assessment, the country is still without robust procurement rules. In fact, the IDB wrote in its report that little progress had been made to measure and publicly report data in critical areas, such as competitive tendering. Further to this, the development institution noted that public protests related to corruption in the procurement process exacerbate the perception that large swaths of the procurement process are closed to some bidders. And moving on, despite March being one of the deadliest months since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in Guyana 1 year ago, public behavior has not changed. This is according to emergency medicine specialist Dr. Zulfikar Bucks, as he referred to the situation as alarming. There are still large gatherings, improper mask wearing, and no mask wearing at all, and the case toll is also on the increase, he said. Notably, Region 4 has the highest number of infections and a high number of COVID-19 deaths as well. We had reported a surge in deaths and new infections last week, with an average of 60 new cases per day and 2 deaths per day. And on that note, let's tell you that 6 years after Guyana struck oil in the lucrative Stabroek Block, the government is now moving to strengthen GRA's ability to meet the tax demands of the emerging oil and gas sector. Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashni Singh, said recently the government is working on upgrading GRA's system since oil and gas is a completely new sector to the Guyanese landscape. In a recent interview, he said new skills are needed in the tax authority to administer and discharge the responsibility relating to oil and gas. Meanwhile, a 27-year-old police constable is now under close arrest after he reportedly struck down a pedestrian who allegedly ran into the path of his vehicle in an attempt to cross the road. According to the police, the dead man has been identified as 23-year-old Charles Williams of Tamari Public Road. The rank involved in the accident is presently at Tamari Police Station, assisting with the investigation into the matter. The accident occurred last Saturday around 20 hours on the Tamari Public Road. According to a police report, the rank was proceeding south along the eastern side of the public road in a motor car, while Williams was walking in the northern direction on the western side of the said road. The rank told investigators that while proceeding, Williams suddenly ran from west to east across the road into the path of the vehicle. The report further stated that Williams was picked up by the rank and public-spirited citizens in an unconscious state and rushed to the Georgetown Public Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. And now let's tell you, police are investigating the circumstances which led to 2 GDF ranks being stabbed and beaten by civilians at a party in Block 22 Westmere, Linden. Commander of Region 10, Hugh Winter, said the incident occurred on Saturday evening, and the 2 ranks, 30-year-old Corporal Selwyn Cumberbatch and 27-year-old Terrence Collins, were involved in a fight. Cumberbatch was stabbed several times with a bottle about his body. He was rushed to the Linden Hospital complex where he remains as a patient. His condition is listed as stable but serious. Collins, on the other hand, was treated and sent away. No arrest has been made as yet. Investigations are ongoing. With the time moving on to 12 hours 8 in Guyana, coming up after the break, man stabbed to death with scissors during argument. New best comers crown Chutney and Soca Monarch winners. American professor urges Guyana to consider gas master plan, and Ramkran says CARICOM ignored Guyana opposition over electoral disgust. Meanwhile, PAHO director says dangerous COVID-19 wave surging through the Americas. Do stay tuned.
This is the news on top of the hour.
Live from our studio in Georgetown.
Kaicho
Weak
Radio,
systems of governance and the
99.1
absence of the
FM.
rule of law both combine to form the perfect stage for corruption
The
to
time is now
flourish.
17 hours.
As
1,
part of
bringing
our
your news in
anti-corruption
capsule.
fight
I
at
am
Kaicho
Kayla
Radio,
King.
we
Now let's
invite
tell
you
you
to
that
join
former
us
Assistant
every
Commissioner
Tuesday
of
evening
Police Kevin
from
Adonis
7:30
and 3
p.m.
other
as
members
we
of the
embark on
Guyana
a
Police
most
Force
needed quest
yesterday made
to
their
remove
first
the
court
tentacles of
appearance after they were
corruption
slapped
from
with a
our
$19
systems.
million
See you
fraud
then for our
charge.
latest program called
The defendants
Governance,
are Kevin
Corruption and
Adonis,
Justice.
Rawl Haynes, Jeremy Fraser, and Michael Corbin. The 4 were slapped with a joint charge, while Corbin and Haynes
A
were
lot
slapped
has
with
happened
individual
since
charges.
oil was discovered
The
in
first charge
2015.
alleged that they
The
and
petroleum
persons
industry is
unknown
an
conspired
ever-changing
in
web
2019 and
of
stole
oil,
$19.3
gas,
million
politics,
belonging
and money.
to the Guyana
It gets
Police
complicated
Force.
sometimes, but we can
Also
bring
making
you
top
all the
story,
latest
Roger Khan
developments
was
and
intended
include
target
you in the
in Palm Court
discussions
shooting, said
here on
sources.
Kaicho Radio.
International lawyer
So tune
challenges
in
Vice
to
President for
99.1
evidence that
or
Gulf Shore
99.5
project will
FM
work.
every Tuesday night
Toddler
at
killed,
20
another
hours
injured
for
after she
Petroleum
fell.
101
Girl,
with
12
me,
years old,
your
allegedly
host,
raped by father.
Kamal King.
Meanwhile, school-
Kaicho Radio, the radio with a difference.
Welcome back. Let us continue with the news. A wife was forced to witness her husband being stabbed to death yesterday with a scissors during an argument with his friend. Killed by a single stab wound to his abdomen is 34-year-old Floyd McGarrell of Wrong Turn Squatting Area, Tushen, East Bank, Essequibo. McGarrell was reportedly slain around 4 hours 45 by a 41-year-old fisherman, also of the same area. He has been arrested and placed in the lockups as the cops investigate McGarrell's murder. Meanwhile, Susan Sakmar, a professor at the University of Houston Law Center, has proffered a critical piece of advice to Guyana as it ventures into the natural gas sector. Consider a gas master plan. With plans already set in motion to land a multi-billion-dollar gas pipeline at Wales on the west bank of Demerara for the intended gas-to-shore plant, Sakmar outlined that a gas master plan would set a firm foundation for Guyana as it develops its gas project. She made those comments and more during the Guyana Basin Summit held on March 18th last. Meanwhile, the leadership of CARICOM is currently ignoring requests being made by Guyana's political opposition for its intervention into the ongoing impasse between the APNU-AFC and the ruling PPPC. This is since CARICOM is probably thoroughly disgusted at the behavior of the APNU-AFC, given the electoral impasse that consumed the country post-March 2, 2020, when the coalition attempted to rig the results of the general and regional elections. This position was adumbrated by chairperson of ANAG, Ralph Ramkaran. Opposition leader Joseph Harmon recently wrote to the CARICOM chairman, and I quote, requesting their mediation of the current stalemate between the government and the opposition. He recalled that the stalemate has arisen because the opposition leader's request of President Irfaan Ali for a meeting to discuss matters of the state has been rejected by President Ali, who demands recognition of the government as a condition for the meeting. And now let's tell you recent revelations that Guyana is experiencing a new wave of COVID-19 cases and deaths appears now to be linked to a wider surge of the pandemic throughout the region. Director of the Pan American Health Organization, Carissa Etienne, noted the surge during a March 23rd media brief. She said this past week over 1.2 million people became sick with COVID-19 in the Americas, and more than 31,272 people died because of the virus. More cases were reported in the region last week than the week before, which means that despite the gradual rollout of vaccines, millions of people remain at risk of illness and death. And on that note, let's tell you that the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports on Saturday night held its first leg of virtual competitions, which kicked off with thrilling performances of the Chutney and Soca Monarch competitions. Both events were live streamed from the National Culture Center and saw 10 finalists competing to be this year's 592 Chutney Monarch and 10 others competing for the 592 Soca Monarch. Although there was no crowd to cheer them on, the contestants in the 592 Chutney competition did indeed bring in their A-game, giving it all they got on center stage. Young Kevin Satrohan Singh walked away with the title Best New Contestant with his song My Baby Guyana. Not only did he win New Contestant, but at the end of the Chutney competition, Singh was crowned this year's 592 Chutney Monarch. Second place went to Chet Singh Mohalal, also known as Bunty Singh, with his hit song Treat Your Woman Right. It is now 12 hours 14. Coming up after the break is your COVID-19 update.
Guyana, please join me on the Glenn Lal Show, 99.1, 99.5, Kaicho Radio, every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 7:20 p.m. and a rebroadcast of the next day at 11 a.m. just in case you missed that program.
And now for a COVID-19 update. The number of confirmed cases in Guyana has reached 9,732, with deaths at 218 and 8,602 recoveries. Meanwhile, worldwide, according to Worldometer, the number of cases has reached 127.9 million, with deaths at 2.7 million and recoveries at 103 million. Before we wrap things up for today's news at noon, let's head over to the page 7 of the Kaicho News for the blunt comment. It is not only disappointing that Vice President Dr. Bharat Jagdeo does not believe a financial viability study is necessary for the behemoth gas to shore project, it is very telling. This man seems to believe himself the owner of the transport for Guyana. He must see himself so highly that with the flick of a finger, he can greenlight a project to the tune of hundreds of millions of US dollars without showing the Guyanese people that it will work. The sheer arrogance of this man to think that the taxpayers footing his salary, the people who voted him into office, do not even deserve the dignity of a justification. This is no place for the Vice President's hubris in this democracy. And with that, we've come to today's News at Noon. The end of today's News at Noon, rather. I am Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening.
Want value for your advertising dollar? Then place your ad